Welcome everybody. Today we're gonna have a look at the parts I like in the movie 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Walt Disney in CinemaScope. I suppose CinemaScope was a thing at some time. You don't really see a movie advertised as being in CinemaScope anymore today. And it's in Technicolor. Wow! This movie is a bit of an acquired taste. The only reason I saw it the first time was because I saw a trailer for it on TV which contained only the scene of the giant squid. So I thought, wow, this looks good. A movie about a giant octopus attacking a submarine. Now that's gotta be cool. Of course, then when I saw the movie, it wasn't about a giant squid attacking a submarine at all. Although there was that one scene of it. So yeah, I think I was a little bit disappointed when I saw it. But I remembered about it a few years later, and then of course I already knew what it was really about, so when I watched it then I liked it, yeah. And I know many other people also like it. So let's have a look at the parts I liked in this movie. For our discussion today, we're going to use a version of the movie from a parallel reality. See if you can spot the differences from the version you know, and note them in the comments for fun. The added and different interestingnesses shall be Easter eggs for you to hunt. The movie starts out with a book opening, just to remind you that you're not really watching a movie, you're reading a book or something. The story starts sometime in the 1800s. The media is scaring the public with clickbaity fear-mongering. It seems they want everybody to believe if you step 1 foot outside onto the ocean, a scary sea monster is gonna kill you. Look at this example. Professor Aronnax of the Paris National Museum is stopped by some who claim they are journalists, and they ask him about 4 questions and he answers about 3 sentences back. Very vague and generalized. He only really said, if we could go deep enough under the sea, we might be surprised at the creatures we find down there. But of course, with that little bit of information they write all this. A whole front page article, complete with an illustration of a giant monster destroying a ship. It seems they have quite a bit of trouble with fake news. Somebody like Tim Pool would have had a field trip, I tell ya. What is happening to journalism? I'm telling you, man. By the way, Professor Aronnax can't get a ship anymore to sail on, because thanks to all the scaremongering, no sailors want to sail the ships anymore. I just had to throw that in there because I do like this shot. For some reason I do like matte shots, especially if the matte shots are done well. They usually don't look real, but that's the thing. They have this storybook quality about them that I find appealing. Not quite completely real, you can usually tell it's a matte, and yet real enough that you accept it as real in that little movie world. It is then that somebody from the US government come to see Professor Aronnax to invite him to come with a team who's gonna do some real journalism, sail out into the sea and see if they can find this monster, if it even exists, and then they can lay all the fear-mongering to rest. So they sail for about 4 months and they don't find anything, and it is then that Disney reminds us that this is a Disney movie by putting in a musical number. Of course, as usual, we never saw anybody rehearse for this musical number, and yet they pull it off perfectly, even with some twerking. But as most Disney movies go, right after the jolly musical number comes a hard punch. They spot a ship exploding on the horizon. And when they go there, finally they also run into the monster. Of course they want to attack it with their cannons, but yeah, the monster attacks them back, and Professor Aronnax falls overboard, and his apprentice, Conseil? Something like that. Some French name, I suppose. Conseil jumps after him into the sea. And so the two of them watch as the monster scrapes their ship a few more times. I wonder how many people who watched the movie spotted that the monster is still scraping the ship here. And finally, after some floating in the ocean, they run into this sea monster. It turns out it's not a sea monster at all, it's actually just a submarine. I suppose in this year, in the 1800s, this story takes place. A submarine was not yet that common, so they are very surprised to find this genius contraption in the water. They find the main sliding door open, as it seems the inhabitants had left that open, as well as the aircon flaps on the top of the submarine, probably to get the boys' dorm room smell out. I suppose it probably doesn't smell too nice in there, what with so many people living together in a captive space. And of course they climb down into it and explore. Here inside the submarine, Professor Aronnax sees what we all think about when we think about a submarine. Wide open spaciousness and beautiful luxury. But Conseil hears somebody outside and finds that it is Ned Land on a rowboat. They decide that their plan is they're gonna row away in their little rowboat as soon as they've scooped out some water and Conseil has gone to call the professor. But then suddenly the air flaps or whatever they are close. And also the hatch closes. So how are they gonna get the professor out now? It is then that Ned Land spots that there's another door closer to the submarine's tail. And they open that and climb down. And they end up near the kitchen. And they go into the kitchen, and it is here where Ned Land gathers some food for them, which is a smart idea, seeing as when they row away in their rowboat, it might be days before they find another ship or land or something. Meanwhile, Professor Aronnax is exploring the ship, and he is simply shocked at how unrealistic the fish looks around here. Look at these things, they're not even color corrected. Now where is all the crew? Well, finally Professor Aronnax spots them. They are having a burial on the bottom of the sea because one of the men was knocked off his feet when the submarine struck the ship. And he fell and he died. Anyway, finally Professor Aronnax and Conseil and Ned Land try to flee in their rowboat. But here's the weird thing. The divers at the bottom of the ocean wear lead-weighted shoes to keep them walking firmly on the ocean floor. I mean, look at this example. When they start diving, they simply drop to the ocean floor like a rock. And yet, through some kind of technological magic, when the plot requires it, they can actually float upward and stay on the surface of the water while they are fighting the people in the rowboat. In fact, this boggles the mind of Ned Land, so he decides to just smack the professor in the head with the oar. It doesn't seem to help him much though, because they capture him along with the professor and his assistant anyway. They then meet the owner of the submarine, Captain Nemo. Captain Nemo is the kind of guy who keeps a fish tank inside a submarine, right next to a window through which he can see all the fish of the ocean without needing any extra work. And after a very short conversation with Captain Nemo decides it's time for a magic swimming lesson. And look at this magic. As soon as Ned Land and Professor Aronnax and Conseil are on the tail of the submarine, they change into completely different people. Now that's some serious submarine magic that. Well, after all that swimming, they must be hungry. So Captain Nemo gives them a nice buffet lunch. But maybe the cook got their order wrong because they don't seem to like what they're getting. It seems they were expecting the chicken or beef and got the fish instead, no matter what they ordered.
Mark, this tastes like veal. The flavor deceives you. That is fillet of sea snake. I guess this isn't lamb. That is brisket of blowfish with sea squirt dressing, basted in barnacles. What is it? It's a recipe of my own. Sauté of unborn octopus.
Ooh, no tip for the cook then. Well, now follows the diving sequence, and I know Disney spent a lot of money and effort on this diving sequence, but I don't know, I never found it that interesting. I mean, it's not bad or anything, it's just, well, they go to collect food on the ocean floor. And Ned Land and Conseil finds a treasure on a ship and then they are attacked by a shark. It's okay, I suppose, but it wouldn't really have mattered to me if they did that inside a studio. Because it's not like the fish or the coral is very colorful or anything. So yeah, I think they spent far too much money on this diving sequence. A little boring. Maybe they could have added some fantasy fish they designed themselves or something. Maybe some mechanical fish. that could stir the imagination better. Because what they had was actually pretty colorless and probably very dangerous to do the way they did it. So yeah, this diving sequence is the one part of the movie I think they could have improved quite a bit with something a little more imaginative. So needless to say, this is usually the part of the movie I fast forward through. Ned Land finds out that on this submarine the treasure actually is used for ballast. Yeah, I don't really know how that works. Why don't they just use water and some real ballast tank spaces and stuff? But yeah, well, they want to use treasure. Who's gonna say that's not right? Anyway, the journey continues. They don't know where to yet, but of course we know it's to Vulcania. And on this journey they also pass through either the North or South Pole. I don't really know which one. And the submarine gets stuck there, and Captain Nemo uses some hot water, I suppose from the cooling system, to melt the ice, and they get free. Meanwhile, Captain Nemo is showing Professor Aronnax what atomic power looks like. Apparently it's all pretty with all the colors of the rainbow. He then shows him, I'm not sure what, probably what the power looks like if you look at it dead on. And I'm not sure what he can see, because first of all, the helmet he's looking through isn't darkening out anything. You can see his eyes through it. And all Professor Aronnax can see is a blinding white light. So yeah, well, apparently he's happy with that, seeing just a white light. One day Captain Nemo shares with Professor Aronnax about his past. It seems he used to work in some kind of quarry where they mine some kind of substance that is used in war making. I'm not sure what it was now, but what I do like is this matte shot. Look at that. They have like the sea and the ship and a composite shot of the people working in the quarry or walking or whatever they're doing. And yeah, Professor Aronnax now believes he knows why Captain Nemo seems so bitter sometimes, bitter towards the world. Because he wants to see these slave camps abolished, and he doesn't know if he'll ever be able to do that, but maybe with the help of Professor Aronnax there is hope yet. And now we come to another nice composite shot with a matte painting in it. Look at this. This one is really pretty, with the model ship and the submarine in the foreground and the sunset background. This shot is rather nice, I'd say. Well, pretty as the scene is, of course Captain Nemo plans to ram the ship so that it cannot deliver its cargo. And now he's got a bit of a problem with Professor Aronnax and Conseil and Ned Land, because they don't like that so many innocent sailors are dying just because of Captain Nemo's anti-war agenda. But I do always chuckle at this bit where Ned Land grabs the curtain and tears it off. I don't know why. It's just funny. But Conseil and Ned Land aren't that happy about matters. Well, Ned Land always wanted to escape eventually, and now he's even more motivated to do so. So Conseil and him plan to escape. They do that by going into Nemo's cabin. By the way, here I'm gonna give another like to Captain Nemo's cabin. I do like this cabin, it's nice and pretty, look at it. For the set design, I'll give it a like. And while Conseil is making love to a seal, Ned Land is writing down the latitude and longitude of where Nemo's base is on a little piece of paper. He then writes that onto 5 pieces of paper along with a message for help. And then Conseil comes in with 4 bottles. And Yeti says, well, you got everything here from something to something. And Yeti only has 4 bottles. And even though there were 5 messages written out, Ned Land finally throws out 4 bottles with messages in them, saying where is Nemo's base and such. Then one day near the coast of New Guinea, the submarine gets stuck on the rocks for some reason, and Ned Land and Conseil decide to try and use this situation to escape. They ask the captain to go onto the beach, since the professor didn't want to go. And let's just give a like for the exterior of the submarine. I like how they must have put this big thing in the water. But yeah, once they're on the beach, some protesters drive them off the beach again. Ned Land and Conseil flee immediately, although these protesters are really just a publicity stunt. Of course, the tribal markings on these protesters are obviously not made for camera close-ups. I don't know if this bit was scripted, but I love this bit where Ned Land is rowing and then his feet shoot up in the air. Pew! Yes, I like funny things. Anyway, they make it back to the submarine, but for some reason the protesters never heard the news about the sea monster. They are not frightened of it at all by the looks of it. In fact, they simply step on board, and it is then that Captain Nemo gives them a lesson in electricity. However, it seems they find this lesson a bit too shocking, and soon they scoot away. I do like the scene, I'll give that one another like. Captain Nemo, however, is not happy about the friends that Ned Land had brought back to the ship, so he decides Ned Land must be imprisoned. But Ned Land, however, doesn't want to be imprisoned, so as soon as the men are bringing him through the ship to imprison him, he decides to fight back and throw one over some railings and kick and clap and I don't know what else. But no, they eventually catch him, and he goes to some room of sorts where there's nets and I don't know what. Probably the stuff from when they were gathering the food at the bottom of the ocean. And let's add another like for this shot. Again, it's a matte shot. Around this painted piece of coast comes another ship. And the ship fires at the Nautilus, and somehow, even though it seems the shell is coming this way, it somehow pushes the submarine backwards. And they become free, and I'll add another like for this shot. Look at this nice shot. Even though the submarine for some reason seems completely blind here, it's still a nice shot. Also this one underwater, look at that with a ship sailing over the submarine. That's a nice shot. Well, since the submarine is now leaking, they sink to depths they have never sunk before. And that's literally. And from all the water running in, this beam thing falls onto another thing that needs to rotate. And when it cannot rotate anymore, the power and the engines of the submarine shut down immediately. And then they start sinking like a rock into the ocean. Fortunately, they do manage to get things running again before the water pressure crushes their vessel. But now it seems they have a stalker. I don't know if the squid thought they were food or what, but the squid grabs the propeller and the tail of the submarine, and I'm not sure if it's supposed to taste through his little thingies on his arms, but he doesn't taste that it's metal. He just keeps hanging on until Nemo have him given a lesson in electricity as well. And he lets go, but for some reason that little scare didn't scare him off. He still goes after the submarine. And this time he grabs the submarine by the side. It doesn't seem to bother too much though. The submarine can still ascend to the surface with the squid on it. So I'm not sure why Captain Nemo didn't just decide they'll just wait until it gets tired and let's go by itself. For some reason they decided they must fight it off of the ship immediately. And so they come outside and they start fighting this squid. The squid for some reason decides to play some basketball with Captain Nemo, grabs him and throw him up and throw him down and such. Anyway, they seem to be having fun playing with this giant squid, but then they find out that the whole thing was just a bad dream and that the actual squid is still on the ship. It was just one of those shared dreams, I suppose, and they'll have to go out again and fight it. So they come out again, and this time in reality it seems there's thunder and lightning and the sea is very stormy and rough. And it's gonna be a little bit harder to fight the squid this time around. But they do so, and again, just like in the dream, Captain Nemo gets caught by one of the arms of the squid. Fortunately, Ned Land comes out, and he throws a harpoon, and he manages to kill the squid and save Captain Nemo. Whew! What an adventure! I'll give this scene another like, because this is the scene that initially attracted me to this movie. Well, here's another scene. I'm just gonna give it a like. It's not an action scene or anything, it's just Captain Nemo and Professor Aronnax talking. But I like the scene, yeah. So, that's a like there. Anyway, they finally come to Volcania, and we see another nice matte painting shot. However, this one for some reason didn't work. I don't know, look at it, it doesn't look real at all. It just needed something, I'm not sure what. Maybe you can write in the comments what you think it needed. But anyway, yeah, they find that there are now ships of sorts. They're flying no flag, but in later shot we see what looks to be British soldiers, so that's probably what they are. I also just want to give a like to the steering cabin, or what would you call it, a cockpit. I quite like the design, especially this thing that does this. I don't know what's that supposed to mean, but yeah, it does this all the time. So yeah, this little steering cabin, I do like it. I'm not sure how practical that would be in real life, to have these big windows on the front of a submarine that you want crashing into ships. So it probably won't be too practical in real life, but yeah, for a movie it looked cool to have these big windows in the front, looking out into the sea or over the sea. So that's another like right there. Well, Captain Nemo goes through an underground tunnel and they arrive in the center of Vulcania. Here's another match shot. Yeah, I think this one is good enough. I'll give it a like. And Captain Nemo goes ashore to destroy everything. Meanwhile, the soldiers are coming over the hill and they are firing at the submarine. And for some reason, Ned Land thinks he can win them over with a little strip show. So he starts undressing and doing a little dance. But it seems no, all the soldiers want to do is shoot dead everybody they see. Doesn't seem that they care that Ned Land and Conseil gave them the position of Vulcania. They're just gonna shoot everybody they see. Well, Captain Nemo comes back onto the submarine, but just as he tries to climb down through the door, he gets shot in the back. I'm gonna give this upsetting scene a like. Not because I like people getting shot, but the way they did it was very dramatically well done. Well, now they have to go out of Vulcania again, otherwise they're gonna get blown up with the explosion. But Captain Nemo now really drives like somebody who's really just phoning it in. It's really just a miracle that they do make it out of the tunnel under Vulcania. And as soon as they are in the sea, Captain Nemo decides that they're all just going to commit suicide anyway. So I'm not sure why he brought the submarine out through the tunnel in the first place. He might as well just have decided that they all stay now on the island and blow up with it. But that's not how it happens. It seems all the men are okay with being killed. All except, of course, for Professor Aronnax and Conseil and Ned Land. Well, when they try to lock Ned Land into his cabin, he decides, no social distancing for me. And he fights his way out of it. He manages to go back into the steering compartment and get the ship to go up to the surface again. Now, I'm not sure how this shot is supposed to work. You can see the bubbles coming out of the submarine, which means that it's releasing the air. So it should really be descending, not ascending. But anyway, for some reason, as the air escapes from the ballast, the submarine does go up, but it hits some rocks on the way and starts leaking severely. However, Ned Land and some guy who is really serious about this suicide and wanting it to go off without a hitch comes back to fight Ned Land, but Ned Land manages to knock him out. He then saves the professor and Conseil, and well, the professor wants to go back and get his journal. But Ned Land says there's no time, because for some reason now the little hallway that they came through is suddenly almost completely underwater. So I'm afraid now he'll just have to write about everything he saw. Captain Nemo then comes to his little big window and he opens it. I always remember this shot. I'm gonna give it a like for that hand with those golden thingies, because that image always stuck in my head. Anyway, meanwhile Ned Land is carrying the professor to the boat, and also they save the seal and they row away. Meanwhile, Captain Nemo is at his window looking at what he probably thought would be the bottom of the sea, and now he sees that he's somewhere on the surface. He then stumbles back onto his little sofa thingy and there he dies, right where he sits. By the way, I'm sure many of you wonder, how would a window like that work? To open like with a round hole that gets bigger. Well, here is a photo of what it looks like when it's outside of the submarine. Apparently you create the same sized, what shall we call them, fins or plates or sheets that all get pulled, I'm not sure where, probably pulled to like the side. If they all get pulled to the side, then it will open like in a little round hole. I'm not sure if they did that by having a person pull on each fin, or if they had it more mechanical or motorized. But anyway, yeah, that round window is quite an interesting concept if you like engineering kind of things. Meanwhile, the other three are still rowing, and for some reason there are these little UFOs in the sky. Are they spaceships? No, they're just from the rear projection. But let's say they are UFOs that sense that there is a big atomic bomb about to go off, and they came to investigate. And of course, finally, kaboom! The whole island blows up, and that's the end of that. It seems Professor Aronnax and Conseil and Ned Land escaped, although they have no water and no food on board, so did they survive? Yeah, I'm sure they did. There were enough British ships in the vicinity to help them now, and hopefully not shoot at them. And last but not least, the submarine gets ready to sink, and just as you see the tip is about to go under the water, they fade to black. For some reason, we're not allowed to see the entire submarine sink. And then we hear the echo of Captain Nemo's words. There is hope for the future, and when the world is ready for a new and better life, all this will someday come to pass in God's good time. He also said before, a power greater than mine makes that impossible, right before it. Who's that power he's talking about? And that's the end of Captain Nemo and the Nautilus. Anyway, yeah, this is one of my favorite movies, and I think the thing I like most about it is the submarine. I was always fascinated with it. I remember when I was younger, I always would have loved to go aboard that submarine, and fortunately I got the chance at Disneyworld. They had the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea ride there, and as you can see, here's my footage of it. You could climb aboard the Nautiluses and then go for a little ride under the water. Unfortunately, it was a little bit of a disappointment because once you climbed into it, it didn't look at all like it did in the movie. I wanted to see this, and instead all I saw is 2 seating rows for the people to sit on with lots of round windows at the side that they must look through. Each person his own window. The ride was very simple. They had little plastic dollies and thingies under the water. Here's some footage of that. Anyway, yeah, unfortunately I'll probably never get on board the Nautilus looking as it did in the movie. Apparently there was an exhibition for that somewhere in the world, but it's now also taken down. So I'll just have to go on board my own submarine for my own movie. Originally this movie, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, the Walt Disney version, was one of the inspirations for it. I also used mats. Here you can see a shot from Yendag of Kevin building his submarine. And here he goes and offloads it into the dry riverbed. And of course there is an interior, but if you want to see it, it'll be uploaded to moicastile.com. Anyway, thanks for watching. I know a lot of you also liked this movie. And let's give a few bonus likes, not for anything in particular, but just overall, because we like this movie so much. A very inspiring piece of work overall. And the total parts I liked about this movie is that. So it'll probably always be one of my favorites. And I'll see you in the next video. Please like and subscribe. See you around, shipmates. Thanks for watching, everybody.